let's go back to that very important discussion of who became Muslim first. We established that Imam Ali alayhi salam was the first person to believe, then Lady Khadija alayhi salam. Well, what do the Sunni schools of thought say? Today, if you ask any Sunni, they'll tell you that the first person actually was Abu Bakr. He was the first person to become Muslim. If you tell them about Imam Ali, either they'll reject that Imam Ali was the first. No, Abu Bakr was the first. Or they'll say he was a boy, so it doesn't really count. The first man, mature man, to have embraced Islam was Abu Bakr. Upon historical analysis, was Abu Bakr the first adult, male adult, to become Muslim or not? What do the historical facts tell us?
I heard that there's like about 13.
We'll examine the facts now. First of all, when do we see the claim that Abu Bakr was the first man? During the Prophet's life, did anyone make that claim? No. During his life, when he became the Khalifa, do we see any references to that? No. In fact, on the day of Saqifa, when he was chosen as the Khalifa, some of those supporters tried to mention his virtues. Was this one of the virtues they mentioned? That he was the first to become Muslim? Because if you are going to be chosen as a Khalifa and you were the first person to be a Muslim, that's a big plus for you. That's something definitely that would be mentioned. In Saqifa, if you look at Sunni sources, is that something that was mentioned? No. So we see that in the Prophet's life, there was no reference to that. In his life, there was no reference to that. It was never a virtue for him. Later, when the Umayyads came, suddenly this became a virtue. What does that tell you? Fabricated. Because if that was really the case, you would see earlier sources that would have confirmed that. You know, at Saqifa, we would have heard this virtue. At the time of the Prophet, we would have heard some companions saying this, but none of that exists. Even during his lifetime, he never said, I was the first Muslim. So these hadiths were actually fabricated later.
So what were the virtues they mentioned?
They would mention some virtues like he's the companion of the cave. He was with the Prophet when he left Mecca, right? He was in the cave. That was a big virtue they mentioned. His age, you know, he's older than Imam Ali, so he's more fitting to be the Khalifa. They mentioned some virtues like that. He's the father-in-law of the Prophet. So they did mention some virtues. But at Saqifa, this was never one of the virtues. But this is the most important one if it was the case, right? He's the first to be Muslim. So if you want to choose him as the successor, that should be your most important virtue. But we see no trace of this virtue at Saqifa, which is an indication that it was fabricated later. Number two, the second point over here. When they fabricated those hadiths, they attributed them to companions like Ibn Abbas, Abu Dhar, people like Sha'bi, even though these same companions narrated that Imam Ali was the first. So what does that tell you? There's a contradiction here. They themselves are saying Imam Ali was the first, but according to those fabricated traditions, they supposedly say, no, Abu Bakr was the first person to believe in the Prophet. So that in itself tells us there's a contradiction over here. Number three, Aisha herself, the daughter of Abu Bakr, admits that he was not the first. Because she says in hadiths that Imam Ali, Khadija, and Zayd ibn al-Haritha, they were the first three to believe. So where's Abu Bakr? She mentions Imam Ali and Zayd before Abu Bakr. Herself, Aisha, the daughter of Abu Bakr. What does that tell you? Was he the first or not?
Do you know where we got this hadith from? Of Aisha saying this?
Yes, we have this in Sunni sources. I can send you the references. Sunni sources attributed to Aisha state that these three were the first to be Muslims. So Aisha herself, he's her father. If that was a virtue, she's definitely going to mention it. She doesn't even mention that. So that, you know, tells us a lot about this claim. So when exactly then did he become Muslim? When we gather the historical clues are very, very different than what many Muslims claim. He actually became Muslim years after revelation. Some clues say 3 or 4 years, but some more authentic clues say 7 years. 7 years after the Prophet received revelation, then Abu Bakr became Muslim. So let's examine some of these clues. Number 1, Sunnis claim that the reason why Abu Bakr became Muslim in that story is that the Prophet ﷺ went to the ascension, the Mi'raj. After he came back from the journey of the ascension, Quraysh started attacking the Prophet. Oh, this liar, he claims he went into the heavens riding on a flying unicorn. They started attacking the Prophet, mocking him. Abu Bakr came and he said, no, the Prophet is speaking the truth. Supposedly, according to this hadith. The Prophet told him, you are the Siddiq. You are the truthful one who believes in truth. That's the meaning of Siddiq, the excessive one who believes in truth. When Abu Bakr was told that by the Prophet, he became very happy, he became a Muslim. Sunnis have narrated this hadith, and that's how Abu Bakr supposedly got the title Siddiq. Okay, let's tell our Sunni brothers, fine, let's accept this hadith for the sake of argument. When did the Mi'raj happen? The ascension? No, it was before, it was in Mecca. The earliest sources say 3 to 4 years after revelation. Many say 5 or 6 or 7 years. So it was definitely not before 3 years. And if they're claiming that he became Muslim after Mi'raj, that means what? It was at least 3 years later, 3 to 7 years later. So this in itself is proof, an argument that we can use to say he was not the first. And there were many Muslims in those early 3 years who actually became Muslim. Many people. Sometimes they do, sister, but that's their belief. That's the core of their school of thought. They'll come up with justifications. You know, if you really corner them, like, okay, fine, this hadith that talks about the Mi'raj, okay, the narrator made a mistake. They'll find a way out because this is a core belief that they have. And when you have a core belief, even if you see hundreds of narrations, let me give you an example. Let's say I come and bring you a hadith that tells you, God forbid, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam committed a crime. And I sit and I show you the hadith with the chain. Will you accept or no? You're not going to accept because you are firm in your belief that Imam Ali is an imam chosen by God. So all these hadiths, throw them against the wall. I don't care about these hadiths. I'm just a theoretical example. Same with them. The truth is there, but because they have a core belief that khalas, he's just the first, no argument, they won't accept any argument. They'll find a way to, respond to your argument. But these are the historical clues. So we tell them, from your sources, you've narrated this. Okay, if we accept this hadith of yours, that's a clue that he became Muslim later on, not in those early days. Yes, brother. In Sirah al-Halabiyya, which is an important Sunni source of biography, he mentions that Abu Bakr got this title after the event of Mi'raj, the ascension, and after that he became Muslim. So that happened a few years after. So this is one clue. The second historical clue, Tabari, who's a scholar of the biography, he says 50 people became Muslim before Abu Bakr. 50 people. Tabari, a Sunni scholar, is saying that. And how long did it take, by the way, for 50 Muslims to become Muslim? At least 3 years. At least. Because in those early 3 years, you did not have 50 Muslims yet. So this tells you Abu Bakr became Muslim at least 3 years after the wahi, after the religion of Islam.
Wasn't the figure given of 75 at the time of Hijrah?
There are a number of figures, but we're just using what Tabari is admitting. Tabari says 50, okay, we'll take 50.
No, is that 75 true at the time of Hijrah?
There are, 75? No, there were probably 200 to 300. No, it was more than 75. When the Prophet migrated, we definitely had more than 75 Muslims. So here Tabari is admitting, that 50 people became Muslim. And then Abu Bakr became Muslim. The third clue that we have, Ibn Kathir, in his book Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya, in a hadith that has a sahih chain, correct chain according to their standards, Muhammad ibn Sa'd, he says, I asked my father, was Abu Bakr, his father was a companion, was Abu Bakr awwalukum islaman, was he the first to become Muslim? He says, la, no. And before him, 50 people became Muslim. So here is a sahih hadith, according to Sunni sources, that says 50 people became Muslim before him. It's not in Bukhari. It's in Bidayah and Nihaya by Ibn Kathir, but the chain is an authentic chain. Remember, Bukhari didn't mention everything. It just has 5,000 hadiths. Many things were left out from Bukhari. And so other scholars came to gather those hadiths that Bukhari did not.
And he was selective too.
Yes, Ibn Kathir is selective, and Ibn Kathir is anti-Shia too. He heavily attacks the Shia, yet he brings this hadith. Now yes, the end of the hadith is something we don't accept. وَلَكِنْ كَانَ أَفْضَلُنَا إِسْلَامًا. Supposedly he said, 50 people did become Muslim before him, but he was the best Muslim. Okay, that's their belief. But in the end, we'll use this hadith to prove that he wasn't the first. He was afdal because he was the best of the companions, he had the highest virtues, the closest to the Prophet. Well, he became the first Khalifa, so you have to justify it somehow, right? If someone's going to come and ask you, you Muslims, why did you choose him as your first Khalifa? You have to make up stuff like that and say, okay, he was the best Muslim. So this is one proof that we have over here. Another proof that not only Shia is narrated, Imam Ali alayhi salam, in a number of hadiths, authentic hadiths. For example, Ibn Jarir, in his book Tarikh, in the second volume, page 60, he mentions this. Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, he says, آمنت قبل الناس بسبع سنين. In correct hadiths that Sunnis can't deny. He says, Imam Ali, I believed, I became Muslim, before the people did by 7 years. When would Imam Ali say this? Now the Imam is not bringing any names, right? He's hinting. What does Imam Ali mean when he says, I believed before people did by 7 years? The Imam alayhi salam, remember, at that time there was a lot of chaos in Muslim society. Oftentimes he couldn't bring names. Because if he brought names, there'd be civil war. So the Imams, when they would talk about who's the Khalifa, who's the rightful Caliph, who represents the Prophet, Imam Ali alayhi salam would say, I believed before they did by 7 years. What does that say? What does that indicate? What is he hinting?
That he should be the first? Abu Bakr? No.
Of course he should be the first, but what else is he hinting? That they became Muslim 7 years later. And who's they? The caliphs. He's referring to the caliphs. Right? The caliphs. That's what he's referring to. Even though he's not specifically mentioning, but the context of the speech and these hadiths indicates that he's talking about those companions. Yes, brother.
Which sermon is this mentioned?
We have many hadiths. I can send you the reference. But the point is, the Sunnis have also mentioned it, and I gave you the reference for the Sunnis. We have in our hadiths many times in which he said that. صَلَّيْتُ قَبْلَ النَّاسِ بِسَبْعِ سِنِينَ. I prayed before people by 7 years. I believed before people did by 7 years. And what he means by people, because we know some people did believe in those early years. So he doesn't mean everybody. When he says people, he means specific people. And it's known by the context of his words what he's referring to. When you gather all of that, it gives you certainty that he was not the first. So who were the first people to believe in? The first 9 or 10. So Imam Ali alayhi salam, Lady Khadija, that's a given. Then who? Zayd ibn Haritha, Khalid ibn Sa'id ibn al-As, Abu Dhar al-Ghifari. He was amongst the very, very early ones, probably the 4th or the 5th Muslim to join the Prophet. Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, Ammar ibn Abasa. Yasir came a little bit later on. We're talking about the very first few days. Ammar ibn Abasa, Utbah ibn Ghazwan, Ja'far, the brother of Imam Ali, the son of Abu Talib, Bilal al-Habashi, he was amongst the early ones. Khabbab ibn al-Arat, he was amongst the early ones. Zubayr, the cousin of the Prophet, he was also amongst the early ones. So these are some names of those very early Muslims. And all of them, according to correct historical hadiths, they became Muslim before Abu Bakr did. All of these names, we have proof and evidence, they became Muslim before Abu Bakr did. So these were some of the early, Muslims who joined the Prophet. Now, when you look at the history of Islam, how some other schools of thought view it, one of their claims about Abu Bakr, other than the fact that, they claim he became the first Muslim, they claim he was instrumental in bringing people to Islam. He was the person who invited many of those companions to actually become Muslim. Is that acceptable or not? When we examine the biography of Abu Bakr, we see that this is highly, highly exaggerated. Many of these hadiths are contradictory and they're flawed. So we really can't accept this claim that he was so instrumental in bringing so many people to the religion of Islam. In fact, Abu Bakr could not convince his own father and son. His own father, Abu Quhafa, he did not become Muslim until 20 years later when the Prophet came to Mecca in the year of the conquest of Mecca. Then he became Muslim. His son, Abdul Rahman, he didn't become Muslim. Even his own sister, Farwa, his wife, Namla, or according to one version, Qatila, he could not make them Muslim, right? Now you're going to come and say he was so instrumental. In fact, without him, none of those early Muslims would have become Muslims. That's an exaggeration. We don't see that in his biography, that he was instrumental in bringing people to the religion of Islam. His daughter Aisha, when did she become Muslim? If you ask Sunni schools of thought, they claim she was the 18th person to become Muslim, and her sister Asma was the 17th. So the 17th was Asma, the 18th was Aisha. There's a major flaw in this claim. What is it? According to Sunni belief, she wasn't even born at this time. Because the Prophet supposedly did the marriage contract with her when she was how old? No. They're even worse than that. Not 9, 6. She was 6 when he did the marriage contract. The marriage was consummated when she was 9. But he did the marriage contract when she was 6. The aqd, the katb kitab as we call it. No, that was in Medina. The Prophet married her in Medina. So wait a minute. If she was 6 or 9 when he married her, the Prophet married her in Medina. And when did he go to Medina? After how many years? 13. After 13 years he went to Medina. And after he went to Medina, after a while he married her. So if she was 9 when he supposedly married her, how was she the 17th Muslim? She was not even born yet. How is she going to become a Muslim? So this tells you that one of these claims is a lie. Either she's not the 17th Muslim, or she was not 9 when he married her. So, schools of thought, you need to figure that out. Which of these is correct? Or they could be both incorrect.
Another claim is that Aisha was the third wife after Khadija.
She was one of the early wives. I don't know exactly which wife they consider her to be, but she was one of those early wives, according to what they say. As for her sister Asma, she was 4 years old when the Prophet was sent as a messenger. When he received revelation, she was only 4. So, come on, that's very unlikely that she was the 17th Muslim when she was 4, when he started receiving revelation. So it tells you that there was a political agenda to make it seem that Abu Bakr and his 2 daughters and his family were amongst the very, very first to become Muslim. And that's not really the case. And let me tell you even more about that. There's a verse in the Holy Quran, in Surah Al-Ahqaf, verse 15. In this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, the human being. When he reaches the age of 40, he says, رَبِّ أَوْزِعْنِي أَنْ أَشْكُرَ نِعْمَتَكَ الَّتِي أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيَّ وَعَلَى وَالِدَيْ. Allah is talking about this turning point in our lives at the age of 40, when we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we say, oh Allah, thank you for giving me my blessings and for blessing my parents. For blessing me and blessing my parents. Sunnis claim this verse was revealed in honor of Abu Bakr and his parents, because they became Muslim, they found faith. So Abu Bakr praised Allah, he thanked Allah for making him a believer, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered his prayers and he made his parents Muslims. That's the version that we are told. So this is one of the virtues, supposedly, that they have claimed Abu Bakr had. He said a prayer, oh Allah, bless my parents, and Allah revealed this verse in his honor. What do we say about that? Number one, Abu Bakr was not 40 when he became Muslim, as we've demonstrated years later. So he was 44, 45, 46 when he became Muslim. So the Quran says, Arba'ina sana, he reached the age of 40. That's not applicable to him. He was not 40. That's number one. Number two, we just mentioned that historical sources tell us his father, Abu Quhafa, when did he become Muslim? 20 years later, when the Prophet was in Medina. So this verse can be applying to him, because this verse is supposedly when he was 40, Abu Bakr, early in Mecca. And his parents did not become Muslim early in Mecca. His mother did 6 years later, but Abu Quhafa, his father, 20 years later. So that doesn't add up. Number three, Surah Al-Ahqaf, verse 15. Verse 15 of Surah Al-Ahqaf, where was it revealed? In Mecca or Medina? In Medina. It was not revealed in Mecca. But supposedly, where did he say this? In Mecca. When he became Muslim at age 40, he did this prayer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered his prayer and he revealed this verse. This verse was revealed in Medina. The one who fabricated this forgot this fact, that this verse was not revealed in Mecca for it to apply to Abu Bakr when he became Muslim and he asked God to make his parents Muslim, and Allah answered his prayer, then he revealed the verse. No, that's not the case. So we see a lot of, fabrications about this, unfortunately.